I'm gonna put myself on do not disturb. There we go.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. Once again, I am Andy with Integrity Data Insights, and I help companies with their reporting, analytics, and digital transformation needs. And I'm excited to have my guest today on with me, Terry Stein, who has a company called Mastering Profitability. So thanks so much, Terry, for joining me.
Hey, thanks for the invite. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so Terry and I had a cool story, kind of how we met. It was at a Christmas luncheon for the Springboro Chamber that we're both a part of, and we weren't even sitting together. But the guy, I think it was the person next to me that knew you, and so anyways, I was like, oh, that sounds interesting what he does. So we struck up a conversation, and a couple months later, here we are. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about what you do. So your background, I mean, you worked for big companies, you worked for Microsoft, one of the biggest there is,
Mm-hmm.
and just love to hear about your journey. How did you go from that to doing what you are now?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. So, I spent 22 years at Microsoft, um,
Nice.
and one of the things that I was doing at Microsoft, it was I did a little bit of technical work, but for the most part, the biggest role that I had and the most um, one of trying to think how the right way to say it is, but the
Yeah.
most interesting, the most valuable job that I had was I was working with some of the Microsoft partners to help them be able to grow their business. And so
Yeah.
when it was talked about, how do you look at a Microsoft partner business from a profitability perspective or from a true business perspective, to help them be able to make money? And of course, being that I was at Microsoft at the time, a lot of that looked like, hey, how can we help you sell more Microsoft stuff to make that happen?
Right.
Which is, I mean, that's part of the deal. That's what you do.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and Microsoft had, at the end of my time, started to put a lot more of the partner stuff online, and it became more self-serve. And I saw, I think this role is probably going to come to an end as it
Yeah.
becomes, more AI oriented and more self-serve and um, that sort of stuff. So I had the opportunity because I'd been there for so long and I have so much gray hair that I had the opportunity to actually take a retirement package. And so,
Nice.
so I retired from there about 3 years ago,
That's
but I
great.
still had gas in the tank, still wanted to go do stuff, still wanted to help others. And so I went and I worked for a tech startup in the e-learning
Yeah.
world,
Okay.
and did that for a year and a half to build their partner channel. And after I left there, I was like, I loved what I was doing at Microsoft, helping small business owners be able to build a good business. And now, if I did this on my own, I can do it on my own terms. I don't have to do it through the lens of how can we help you sell more Microsoft stuff. And I
Right.
can span industries. So I can talk about this with more than just the Microsoft partner community or other tech consulting companies. I can work with
Right. Because there's probably a lot of similarities
landscapers.
between.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the profit
Um,
strategies are the profit strategies, so yeah, I said, hey, you
so
know what? I'm going to go do this on my own. I'm going to go make a big
That's
change in the world.
great.
Yeah,
Awesome. I wish I would have met you like 3, 4 years ago. You probably could have helped me in my business because I've always kind of had an affinity for Microsoft stuff, right or wrong. I've always used a lot of their stuff. That's still kind of my sweet spot. So, would I have been kind of like your target, or would I be too
yeah,
small for the kind of
yeah,
people you work?
totally. Yeah,
Because I know I'm
yeah.
sure there's
So
some of their partners are massive, I'm guessing.
yeah. I mean, I worked, in different stints. I worked with at the top end like Compaq, HP, and Accenture, um, and at the bottom end, I worked with, you know, a guy working out of his mom's basement, but he was a Microsoft
Yeah.
partner. It's like, um,
Right, right.
so I covered more of the dirt in some parts of the job that I was doing, and so for a while I
Right.
had responsibility for Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, and if you were a Microsoft partner, I managed the dirt, so to speak. And so
Yeah.
in that territory, I had responsibility.
Well, that's great. I love that, and I feel like that's maybe why I have a connection to you too. Is like I feel like even though we're do kind of different things, obviously, but like, I was the same way where I worked for a really big company for 16 years, LexisNexis, and then I
Mhm.
feel like I bring a lot of that into the smaller companies I work
Yeah,
with, right? And I feel like you're
yeah.
kind of doing the same thing. So
It's exactly right. It's exactly right. It's like, a lot of the small business owners, and I kind of focus on small business, and that doesn't necessarily mean solopreneur. Um,
yeah,
you know, there's I was doing some research on it, and any company less than 20 employees represents like 89% of the companies in the US, right?
yeah, wow,
89% of the companies in the US are 20 employees or less. It's so the opportunity
yeah,
out there to talk to small business owners is incredible. And I get the opportunity to say, hey, I bring over 20 years of experience working in the Fortune 5 to
right.
bring those big business insights down to small business and help you be able to grow.
That's great. Yeah, so speaking of helping, companies grow, like I attended so if you're local to the Cincinnati, Dayton area, Terry does kind of in-person workshops, and I attended one of them a month or so ago, and, I was really impressed with it. I told him I wasn't thinking it was gonna be terrible by any means, but, we've all been invited to those things, and it turns into but I was really impressed. Terry's, like, does an amazing job of, like, making things relatable and interesting, and, so we're going to cover a little bit of that. Obviously, we don't have time
Yeah.
to go into all of what you would
Yeah. Yeah.
cover, but just would love your thoughts on, what are some of these strategies that somebody can do to help them, you know, make more money, which is what,
Sure.
obviously what all small business people are in business
Yeah.
for. So,
That's what we're trying to do, right? And it's funny. Thank you for the compliment on the workshop. I
sure.
appreciate that. One of the things I try to do is try to take the boring component of profit and finances and all that sort of stuff. Let's make it fun. Let's make it relatable. Let's make it
Yeah.
in a way that anybody can understand. And when I talk to small business owners, so many times they think of, hey, there's a couple of ways that I can make more profit. One of those ways is I need to have more customers that bring me more income, or I need to
Right.
figure out a way to cut my costs, right? And when we talk about those couple of things, and those are valid strategies for sure, but they're two of 40 that I talk about. And so,
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know, even as you who've been through the workshop, you have a little bit of exposure to some of them, but
Yeah.
the,
I think we
the
maybe covered
ability,
10 of them, maybe,
yeah,
possibly.
yeah, 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 yeah. I think we covered 4 or 5 of them actually.
Wow. Okay. Even
And
less.
so like even to sit down and say, how many profit strategies could you name? Most people can't name more than a handful of them.
Right.
And so it's one of the things that I do is like, hey, we can work across 40 strategies, because what a lot of small business owners try to do is they say, I can either increase my revenue or I can decrease my costs. And
Mhm.
in order to make a big impact, I need to make a significant change in that, right? It's like, talking hundreds of percent impact or thousands of percent impact in order to actually move that needle a little bit.
Right.
And my approach is a little different. And I say, hey, we could make a little bit of impact across 10, 12, 20, all 40 strategies. And if we made just a 2% or a 3% impact across a lot of different strategies,
Yeah.
all of a sudden those things start to compound on each other, and it becomes something that the small business owner says, oh my gosh, suddenly all up, these little teeny tiny improvements that I've made in my business across multiple different areas have added up to hundreds of percent impact or thousands of percent impact. And
Right.
it becomes a whole lot more realistic. It becomes a whole lot easier for a small business owner to wrap their head around the fact it's like, oh, I could make a 3% impact, or I could make a 5% impact in this part of my business. That seems totally doable. But when you say,
Yeah.
can we make 100% impact or 1,000% impact? That suddenly seems impossible, and kind of the eyes glaze
Yeah.
over. They kind of check out. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I
Yep.
could definitely that's a great advice. I'm big into, like, taking bite-sized chunks, because otherwise,
Yeah.
it's a mental thing, right? And a lot of people know, that they should be doing certain things and don't do it. So,
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny, that example kind of comes alive in the workshop, and you saw this, and probably the
yeah,
people who are watching this have seen it on social media or what have you as well. It's like, would you rather have $1 million today, or would you rather have a penny today that doubles every day for a month?
that's
And
right.
and so we have this scenario, and if you've seen the answer on social media, it's pretty common out there on YouTube and whatnot, with
Yeah.
people doing these little skits with it. But a lot of people tend to say, "I'll take the $1 million today."
Yeah,
Heck yeah,
right. Right.
right?
That's probably without, knowing the answer, that's probably what I would have said.
Yeah, yeah. But if you actually do the double, take the penny and it becomes 2 cents, then 4 cents, then 8 cents, and so on. It's pretty unremarkable until you get to about day 20. And at
Wow.
day 20, it starts to become really, really impactful. And by the time you get to day 30, you're at $5.3 million. And
Wow.
it's obvious in that scenario that the penny doubled is the better deal. And it just kind of helps drive home the point during these workshops that small incremental changes to your business have a much bigger impact because of the compounding that happens when you start stacking these profit strategies together.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, let's talk about, maybe, I don't know what you want to go into, but maybe let's just start with one of them. I don't know if you want to get into,
Yeah,
obviously, just mention maybe one strategy that we could talk through.
sure. Yeah. And, one of the things that I think happens a lot is, and this is so true in the IT world. When I was at Microsoft and I was working with the IT consulting companies, um, they have such a hard time differentiating themselves. They
Mhm.
think they have differentiation, but if you actually went and looked at your website versus your number one competitor's website,
Yeah.
they all kind of say the same thing, right? And so
Mhm.
what you have to do is you have to get to a point where we talk about your market dominating position. You want to get to that spot where you are a category of one, where you don't have any other competitors, because we are so unique in what we do.
Yeah.
There's no one else. There's no one else out there that does what we
Right.
do, right? And so if you can get to that perspective and get to that point, then you have this position of domination, which really leads to the idea of, what is it that my customer really wants? It's not the best price, right? What they want, what your customer wants, is the best value for the price, right? It's like they don't care if it costs $5 or $10.
Right.
What they care about is, in my $5 opportunity, am I getting $5 worth of value? Or in my $10 opportunity, am I getting $20 worth of value? Well, if I can get $20 worth of value for $10, I'm going to take that deal all day long versus the $5 value for $5. Right? If that
Right.
if that makes sense, right? And so
Yeah, I'm
business
thinking
owners
through it
miss
because,
that.
like, we were talking right before, I actively have a company replacing our furnace right now. And my wife and I just went through this last night. Like, okay, here's the options. What do we want to do? And we ended up kind of picking middle of the road, but it's like it felt like it was, we definitely evaluated that, like, well, if we paid more for this one, is it, are we really going to get anything more out of it, even though it's,
Mhm.
wasn't a huge amount of difference dollar wise, but it just, yeah, so I definitely, unfortunately, I relate to it,
Yeah.
currently with what we had to go through. So
Yeah, and it presents a big deal, because the challenge becomes, when you don't do a good job of differentiating yourself, if you don't do a good job of identifying, here's how we're unique, what you're doing is you're leaving the customer to decide how you're different. And
right.
when you leave it to the customer to decide, is option A or is option B the better choice? 9 times out of 10, they look at price. Right? It's like, oh, I can't tell a difference between these two. They look like a commodity product.
Right.
Like I could get the same thing with company A that I can get with company B, and company A is cheaper. So I'm going to go with company A. And that kind of leads to people to believe that price is important. And while it is important, it's not as important as understanding what's the value that I'm getting for that price.
Right. And I guess too, thinking about it is like, obviously, like becoming kind of a field of one, or what you called it, like obviously you have to be able to walk the walk, right? You can't just say
Yeah.
that you are and
Yeah.
market it, right? As
Yeah.
if, hey, I'm the best
Mhm.
business intelligence consultant in Dayton, Ohio, if I'm not, right? Kind
Yeah.
of. Is that, and
Yeah,
is it?
yeah, for sure. And a lot of companies, they try to differentiate on their website, and they talk about things that we talk about that are platitudes, right? It's like we're the lowest cost. We are a family-owned business. We do, we
Yeah.
have these things that, we provide exceptional customer service. It's like, yeah, everybody says that.
Right.
Business owners think that those things are differentiators when really they're not, right? It's like we were
Yeah.
voted number one in customer service in Dayton, Ohio. Well, now you got something, right? When we
Right.
promised to respond to your call within 1 hour. That now you're talking about specific things that make you truly different, right?
Right.
We
And
have
does it take time to kind of get to that? Like, I'm just thinking of my own business, how that's ultimately what we all want to get to, right? Is
sure,
that
yeah,
key differentiation, and, knowing kind of your niche. Like, what's the old saying, riches and niches, I think it is.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yep.
Um,
Niches are important. But even things like experience, right? It's like, hey, my team has 30 years worth of experience, or we have, collectively 500 years of experience
right.
working on
Okay.
Microsoft technologies, or whatever that is, things
Right.
that set you apart, where you have specific data, which is where, you can kind of come in with what you do of like, how can I capture that business analytics? How can I capture the data that shows me how I could truly be different than the guy down the street?
Right. And is it a long transformation? I mean, I guess like when somebody kind of decides, or you guide them kind of down this path, is it, I'm guessing doesn't happen immediately, or it could be that they already have that inside them, but they're not telling other people, or they
That's
have that.
yeah.
Is that
Yeah, most of the times they have it. They just haven't been able to peel back the onion enough to
I
get to it.
see.
And one
And
of the
articulate it.
ways that you can do that super easy, or I shouldn't say super easy, but easier than you know
Right.
than trying to uncover it yourself, go ask your customers, why did you buy from me? Right? And it's like they had to make a choice of
Right.
why they bought from you. Hopefully the answer isn't because you were the lowest price, right? Because then that tells you that you didn't, that you're not
Right.
articulating your value. But what have you experienced? Would you choose to buy from us again, and why? And those kinds
Yeah.
of answers from your customers directly will help you be able to identify how you're different than the other folks out there.
That's tremendous. Yeah, and that makes me want to do that. I worked, I still have a client that's in the market research space, so I understand definitely the need of, the value of getting that opinion. That's a great piece of advice for all. I mean, and that's a fairly easy, right? I mean, you could either have a conversation with somebody, to
Mhm.
get that information. I'm guessing you could do a more
Yeah.
formal survey,
Survey,
but I mean,
yeah,
it's a fairly low hanging fruit, right? As far
yeah.
as, getting that information, right?
It's not hard. It's not hard. The other thing, so that whole value piece and understanding your market dominating position is a key component. And that's one of the very first things that I work on with clients that I work with. It's like we got to figure out how to make you a category of one. But
Right.
the other key thing, and I'll talk about that, I'll share with you from a strategy perspective is I saw this a ton when I was working with Microsoft partners, is that there is this erosion of margin in your business. And
Okay.
this happens a lot across any industry, especially with inflation being what it is, the economy being what it is. prices are going up, the materials go up, and do you take the time to evaluate your pricing to your customer? Right? And a lot of companies don't increase that price because they're afraid that the customers are going to, go away from them and, go to the next business. But in the IT world, I see this a lot because that IT community here in Cincinnati, Dayton is pretty small.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us know each other. And so what happens is employees jump from company to company, right? And they jump from company to company because, hey, I'm here and now I'm going to go here because they're giving me a better pay raise, right? They're giving me a better salary, right? And so then this person jumps over here. Now I got to replace that person, and now I have to pay a higher wage to to have that replacement person come in. And over the years, we're paying the IT folks a higher percentage, but we haven't really looked at how we're charging our clients for that. And so I don't hold anything back against people going and getting a better salary. And I think that's all well and good, right? But if you're not taking the time to say, hey, to realize that your margin is eroding as you have these people shift from company to company and replace them with higher wage people, now your margin is really suffering. And so there's just the need to evaluate your pricing, but you can't increase your price unless you're willing to increase your value too. And so you've got to make sure that value is staying there, and which means in the IT world, you got to innovate, right? Because you've got to continually create new offerings, continually create new things that add value to what your customer's paying for.
Right. I know it's not IT related note, but I think I shared the story with you earlier. But a person came to our house to tune our piano probably two years ago or something. I don't really play too much, but and this guy told me, he's like, I've never raised my rates. And I think it was like 20 some years. He's still charging the same amount. I'm thinking, like, how do you survive on that? It's
That's right.
But
yeah.
So just,
he's probably scared that people are going to not have him service their pianos anymore. And it's something I see so often. It's like, don't be afraid to do that. And in the workshop that you attended, we talked through that scenario, and we actually do the math that shows like, hey, you'd have to lose like 25% of your customer base with a 10% price increase in order for it to not break even. It's almost always going to come out in your favor, raising those prices, as long as you have the value that goes along with it. And innovation is key, right?
Yeah, those are so that's a couple of really great strategies. Let's switch topics a little bit. I know another side of what you teach and what you kind of talk about is strategic planning. And that's something you help businesses with. And analogy I like to use again is like the flossing analogy. Unfortunately, like everybody knows they should be doing it, myself included. But so few of us do that. I mean, I feel like that same thing kind of applies to strategic planning.
It is.
What do you think it is, or is my hunch right? Is that the case? And if so, what's your feeling on what do you think why don't they do it?
Well, I think they don't do it for a couple of reasons. One is because I think your analogy is spot on, right? Flossing's not fun. It's a necessary thing that you got to do, but people are like, I don't really know how to do it. Maybe I don't have a lot of experience doing it. So many business owners that I talk to have a passion for what it is that they do, right? Whether that's building dashboards, whether that is grooming a dog, whether that is throwing mulch, and planting plants. They love doing that stuff. They don't love the aspects that are required to run a business. And so, it's one of the things I kind of point back to our education system. And back when I was in school, like, we weren't taught how to be a good entrepreneur. We were taught how to be a good employee.
Follow the rules. rules, keep your head down,
Yeah, yeah.
do what you're told. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah, it's like we know how to balance a book, we can do that from, in an accounting world, we know how debits and credits and all that sort of stuff, and, we were taught how to be a good employee for somebody, but we weren't actually taught, it's like, "Hey, let's teach you what it looks like to go build a business around your passion. Here are the things that you need to think about." It's like, I don't know that I ever attended a strategic planning class, when I was going through
Yeah.
school.
I mean,
It's like
yeah.
we just didn't do it. Right. And so now you get out in the work world and, hey, I've got this grand idea, I've got this passion, I want to go do this thing, but really I have no idea how to do that. And so when it comes to strategic planning, a lot of people don't know how to do it. And so it's like, I don't know how to do it, so I'm just not going to do it. The other thing is that I see a lot is when people actually do go through the exercise of strategic planning, it becomes shelfware. And
Yeah.
so I did my plan and now I put it on the shelf and now I'm going about my own business. I can check the
Right. I'm
box.
not going
I
to
did it.
think about it again. And
Yeah, yeah. And it really needs to be a living document. It needs to be something that, you go through the exercise and you put it together and you're keeping track of this. And really it ties in a great deal for what it is that you do to help businesses as well. Because as we think about the components that go into strategic planning, the first thing that I typically think of is aligning your vision, your mission, and your core values, right? Because
okay.
it's important that as you build out your plan, that your plan aligns to who you are as a person, who you are as a company. Are you, the branding that you're putting out to customers, is that in alignment with your vision, mission, and values? And because you want all those things to be consistent. And then you think about the next thing a lot of people know, the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses,
Right.
opportunities, and threats, right? And these are ideas that you're thinking about. It's like, hey, where am I good? Where am I weak? And you have to be kind of honest with yourself and be
Yeah.
self-critical and like, I can do better here. There's opportunity to raise the bar higher, right? And opportunities are what are the areas in the marketplace that there are gaps that I could maybe innovate and take advantage of. And then threats, like what could be lurking around the corner that I need to be prepared for, because the worst thing as a business owner that you can have happen to you is to be surprised. And when you're surprised when something bad happens, it could happen, right? But if you
Right.
haven't planned for that, the difference between having done strategic planning and having not done strategic planning is whether you're going to address that issue as a critical hairs on fire moment, or whether you're going to have said, oh, I planned for this. In this scenario, if this happened, here's what I'm going to do. I've already thought about it, and now I can go execute on that with a clear head and not emotional about it.
Right. And
Right.
it's probably a couple of thoughts I had. One one comment I wanted to that I kind of maybe answer my own question, but I was thinking, why don't people do strategic planning more? At least in my experience, what I would answer for myself is, and back to my flossing analogy, I think if you haven't felt the pain of it, like if you go to the dentist and you don't have any cavities still, maybe you're not in top
Mm-hmm.
shape, whatever, but
Yeah.
they fixed whatever you had going on. You're like, I don't need to do that because see, I had no cavities. Like I think a lot of businesses, they're skating by, they're doing okay, but they probably could be doing better. But they're kind of like, well, I'm doing okay. What do I need that for? I don't know. That was one thought I had, and then
It doesn't hurt that bad.
yeah, yeah, I guess that's true.
Mhm.
But I guess and I love your thoughts on that with the SWOT. My wife, and their nonprofit just went through this. Super valuable. What would you say? I mean, how long? Somebody that is new to strategic planning. Sorry, I can't say that, but
Mhm.
like, I guess just maybe some tips on how could they get started? Like, maybe you use me as an example. If I'm gonna
Mhm.
after this call, if I was gonna, get started on it, what are a couple things I could do? besides hiring you, but
Yeah. Well,
good
there's always that option, right? But I think the SWOT analysis is a great place to start, right? It's pretty simple to consider. I have in my process, that vision, mission, goals, alignment, but the very next thing is SWOT analysis.
yeah.
And it's pretty easy to go through and really be self-critical about your organization and say, what is it that I do really well? What is it that I kind of suck at that I wish that I didn't suck at? And it just kind of go through those exercises of identifying that. It's a great starting point.
Right.
But then ultimately, you have to set goals. Right? And we talk about the SMART framework. Everybody probably is familiar with the SMART framework, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time bound kind of
goals. I
I
was trying to think in my head of
Yep.
that sounds right.
Yep. So those are all a thing. And then we get into the areas where you can really help, from your business. And it's like, hey, how are we progressing against the goals once we have them? How is that looking? And you have the ability to, with today's technology, to be able to get real-time results and be able to see in real time on a daily basis or hourly basis, here's how I'm performing. And of course, that performance doesn't mean anything unless you know what it is that you're trying to necessarily achieve. And so then we talk about gap analysis, and then things like a correction of errors or a plan to exceed plan, so that at any given moment, am I on track to achieve what I'm trying to achieve? But that SWOT analysis becomes kind of the key step, I think, for a first step. If somebody's going to say, hey, I need to do something, what can I do?
That's great. And we were talking earlier too, like, and not saying that this would replace anything you're doing, but a great way to, if you're intimidated by it or whatever, is get on your favorite AI and just start a conversation with it. Like, hey, I have a consulting business. I'm trying to work through my SWOT, can you help me walk through it? And it'll guide you and it'll prompt you. And it's kind of like, not saying it's the end all be all, but it can help you think through things that you might get stuck, on your own otherwise.
Yeah. It's kind of going back to your flossing analogy. It's kind of like you still have to floss, but with AI, you could have a machine that's flossing for you. So
Hey, that's great. I hope a lot of dentists are listening to this because I'm giving them a lot of material here. So that's great. Do you have any kind of, examples of, and it could be, in your past life or your current life, whatever. I mean, I don't mean it that way, but your past career or current, like where, somebody did it could be any one of the strategies you've talked about, and like, tell a story of, was there a big difference in what they did?
Honestly, the thing is with these strategies, they're not new, right? They've been around for decades. I mean, multiple decades, right? It's just being able to understand them. And so, they're over the course of decades, there've been thousands of companies who have implemented this and made significant differences in their business. The thing that I would encourage for business owners, though, is, when you got into business, a lot of us got into it because you were passionate about what it is that you do. Right. And now you have to kind of shift and say, I need to spend more time working on the business rather than working in the business. And so there's kind of this mindset shift that has to happen if you're going to be successful in strategic planning and running a business. And that is going from that role of being the laborer in the business to being the leader in the business. And it's an important mind shift. And if you're willing to embrace that and say, okay, I know that I need to shift from laborer to leader, what are the things that I need to do? Strategic planning is one of those things. And as long as you have the mindset to say, I'm going to go tackle this, then you have a great chance of being successful. And you could be one of the thousands who have had, significant impact in this. And again, I would say it's not about making hundreds or thousands of percent impact in your business. It's taking a couple of things and saying, how could I be 3% better? How could I be 5% better in this area of my business, and revisit that on a regular basis.
Right. Wow, that's great advice. Well, thanks so much, Terry. I really appreciate all your insights. Any
Sure.
other strategies you want to leave us with, or
Yeah, well, I would like to offer up. It's hard to cover everything that
exactly.
we do here in a short call, but for anyone who's watching this, I have an ebook that I've written across. It covers 12 strategies. It's what I use to work with business owners like you and others to say, hey, let's spend an hour together, and I'll help you find $100,000 of new profit opportunity in your business. And so there's an ebook that I will give everybody for free here on that.
That's
so
awesome.
My website, you see the title here, and my company's Mastering Profitability. So if you go to masteringprofitability.com and then /free-book, that will get you to the spot. I'm not sure how to put that in the chat.
Yeah,
here,
well, right after this, I'll put it on the in the comments of the LinkedIn Live. But
yeah.
well,
But I'd
thanks.
love to give that to anybody.
Oh, thanks, Terry. Well, thank you so much, Terry. This makes me want to go do some of the stuff that you're saying, and it's a pleasure to chat with you. And what's the best way to get a hold of you? I guess you kind of already mentioned it, but if somebody wants to learn more about you, what's shout out an email or website or anything else?
Yeah, so my website is masteringprofitability.com. You can reach me at terry@masteringprofitability.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the stuff. And feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect with anybody. And if you go to masteringprofitability.com/book a call, that will get us to have a phone conversation together if you want.
All right. Really encourage everybody to do that. Terry's a great guy, and I've loved getting to know him better, and hope to continue that in the time to come. So thank you all for watching. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Take care.